هبت نفحات أنسية فشد البلبل ألف تحية وبدا البدر.
We are still in this blessed month of Muharram, one of the sacred months, a month in which is the blessed day of Ashura that we've spoken about in the past few weeks, and a month which is in undoubtedly connected to the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, as the family of the Prophet ﷺ was martyred in this month, Imam al-Shuhada Sayyidina Imam Hussein radiallahu anhu and his family at Karbala, likewise the one heir and the one successor that was left on the field of Karbala, the son of Imam al-Hussein, whose name was Imam Ali Zayn al-Abidin radiallahu anhu, he was also martyred later on, years later, in Muharram as well. This is the source, one of the sources says it was the 18th of Muharram that he was martyred. Imam Ali ibn Hussein, known as Zayn al-Abidin. So I want you to imagine a person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His divine wisdom and His hikmah, saved to be martyred on this day of Karbala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose one of the sons of Imam Hussein. His name was Ali, his title was Zayn al-Abidin. And because he was too sick, and this was the divine wisdom, he was not able to participate in the battle, and he was spared in the battle because he was to come and in the latter years, through his offspring, the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, the blessed descendants of the Prophet ﷺ, those who would carry the message of Tawheed and the message of the Quran and the teachings and the pure secrets and spirituality of the Deen, would be from his descendants. The Husseini lineage, especially the lineage of Imam Hussein, would continue through Imam Zayn al-Abidin. And this is the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divinely selected him not to participate in the battle, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in the hearts of the people who were the enemies of Imam Hussein and the family not to take his life. And he was spared through the divine wisdom, and this was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's planning from before, that through him, the descendants of Sayyidah Fatima, Al-Zahra, and Sayyidina Imam Ali, and of course the Prophet ﷺ before that, would continue through that Husseini lineage and will spread Islam until Yawm al-Qiyamah. And likewise we have the Hassani lineage that continued through Imam Hassan. So the Prophet ﷺ, his lineage continues now, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. So Imam Ali Zayn al-Abidin, radiallahu anhu, just imagine, he witnessed the martyrdom of his father, he witnessed the martyrdom of his brothers, he witnessed in front of his eyes the martyrdom of his cousins, of his family. One after the other is becoming shaheed, is becoming martyr. Radiallahu anhu. We cannot imagine the amount of sacrifice that he gave. Right? When a person passes away, that person's life has finished on this earth, is different. But we know that the person who is left behind, they have a very difficult situation. They have to bear the pain, they have to bear the loss. And so Imam Ali Zayn al-Abidin radiallahu anhu was among these mountains because his heart was such a mountain and firm in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he had to bear this loss. And regardless, even though he faced such a loss radiallahu anhu, he did not give up the teachings of his grandfather sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he did not give up propagating the teachings of his grandfather sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one thing that we learn from his life, as Muslims, often we hear so-and-so has gone through depression. We often hear this, especially in our country, in North America and the West. We're facing depression. My daughter is depressed, my son is depressed, I'm depressed. And many times in our living we see that people are committing suicide. Because their circumstances, they say, we cannot handle such circumstances that we have to commit suicide. I say, look at the life of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Did he commit suicide? No. He looked in front of his eyes, his father was martyred, his brothers were martyred. Even his younger brother, who was just a baby, in the laps of his own father was martyred. An arrow pierced him and martyred, and he was martyred with Hazrat Ali al-Asghar. His cousins were martyred. The ladies of his household were treated unfairly and unjustly. And And this was done right in front of his eyes. And did he say, I was depressed? Did he say, I want to commit suicide? No. Suicide is haram in Islam. We cannot commit suicide. The Prophet ﷺ said, if any of you ever go through any difficulty, remember my passing away. Remember my passing away. How hard it was for the Sahaba. When the Prophet ﷺ left this physical world, how hard was it for the Sahaba? The Prophet ﷺ said, if you go through any tough time, he's talking to us, all of us, the whole ummah. Right? He said, remember my passing away from this world. How tough it was for my companions, for my Ahlul Bayt. Right? So in Islam, we have no concept of suicide. We have no excuse for committing that. And we have no excuse for depression. We should always have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recite the verses of hope. Reflect on the verses of the Quran which give us hope. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. That, oh, say, O beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to my servants who have sinned a lot, who have sinned excessively, أَسْرَفُوا, who have committed great sins upon themselves, لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Do not despair in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not give up hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives all sins. إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. And indeed, He is the most forgiving, the most merciful. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. That indeed the person who give up in the hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or give up in the mercy of Allah, those people who despair in the mercy of Allah, these people are kafirun. These people are disbelievers. This is a quality of a disbeliever, to give up in the mercy of Allah, to not have hope, or to despair, and to say that I'm doomed, my life is doomed. Look at Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Imam Ali ibn Hussein. After all that, he kept teaching. He kept on the path of the Prophet ﷺ. He did not seek revenge. This is another lesson we learn. His way of revenge was not to seek revenge against the murderers of his father, the murderers of his father, Imam al-Hussein, the people who martyred Imam al-Hussein, he did not seek physical revenge. But he knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give justice on the day of judgment. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, he relied upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His tawakkul was on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though he could have taken revenge, and he could have made dua, and he had followers, he had lovers in Medina, he could have gathered them and gathered an army, and from Mecca and Medina, the people who loved his grandfather sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who loved his father, who loved his grandmother, radiallahu anha, who loved, the Sayyidah Fatima, radiallahu anha, all the muhibbeen and the tabi'een, they would have followed him, and he could have taken that army and fought against the murderers of his father, fought against those people who oppressed his family. But he didn't do that. But how did he fight? He fought through knowledge. He fought through spirituality. He continued the message, and he continued the way, the prophetic way, by teaching the people the right way. By teaching them ilm, by teaching them the Quran, teaching them the true sunnah, the true akhlaq of the Prophet ﷺ. Because through that is the greatest way to fight. Because through that, how many imams were created at his hands? How many ulama, how many fuqaha, how many lovers of the Prophet ﷺ, how many ushaq, how many people, righteous people, shuhada, were trained at his hands, and they spread that knowledge through generations and generations to come. Look at the lineages of all the awliya Allah. If you take their spiritual lineage, or if you take their blood lineage, many of them. For example, Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Qaddasallahu Sirruhu al-Aziz, Khwaja Mu'inuddin Chishti, Khwaja Gharib Nawaz, Radiyallahu anhu, Qaddasallahu Sirruhu al-Aziz, Sayyid Ahmad al-Rifai, Sayyid Ahmad al-Badawi, Sayyid Ibrahim al-Dusuki. If you take many of the awliya Allah, who are Sayyids, they're either descendants of Imam al-Hasan al-Hussein. So their blood is going through that lineage. And many of them, they go to Imam Zayn al-Abidin. And if you look at their spiritual chain, that they've taken their knowledge from this person, this Imam, from this Imam, often you see the Imam Zayn al-Abidin in that chain. So look at the effect that he left. Once what happened, looking at the akhlaq of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, they did not desire any political power. These are the Imam of the Ahlul Bayt. I want to clarify a fact that when we say the A'imma of the Ahlul Bayt, so when we're talking about the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah also believes in the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. There might be a misconception. Some people say that, okay, this concept of Imamat or the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, this is belonging to the Shia only. Okay, I want to clarify, we also believe, even the 12 Imams, Imma Ithna Ashar, although we're not Ithna Ashari or we're not Shia, we're Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but we believe in the piety and the sainthood and the sanctification of these great people, these 12 Imams. Now the difference between the Shia and the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is the Shia say they are ma'sumin. The Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we say the ma'sumin or isma is reserved for the prophets and the angels. Ma'sumin meaning perfectly innocent and pure and saved, divinely saved from sin. This quality belongs to the Mursaleen, Anbiya wal Mursaleen, the prophets and the messengers, and the angels. But when it comes to the awliya or the saints of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the siddiqun, shuhada, salihin, the virtuous and righteous people, we say they are mahfudin. So they are mahfud, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them divine protection from committing anything wrong. That Allah protects them through wilayah, through giving them sainthood. As Allah says in the Quran, أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. That indeed the friends of Allah, awliya Allah, لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ, there is no fear for them, and nor do they grieve. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. These are the people who believe, the believers, and they're the people who are pious, they have taqwa, yattaqoon. They are God-fearing, they are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we say the awliya are mahfudin. This is the difference between the Shia perspective and the perspective of us and the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, alhamdulillah. But we still believe in their piety. We still believe that these Imams were righteous, and they were, as the Prophet ﷺ said, the two things that he left us behind, he said, I'm leaving you two things. The Quran, the heavy things, two weighty things. The Quran, the Book of Allah, and my itra, my progeny, my Ahlul Bayt. And these two things will not separate. That means the Ahlul Bayt, the true Ahlul Bayt, the people who act upon the teachings of their grandfather ﷺ, will be intertwined with the Quran. That means they will be always acting upon the teachings of the Quran. And they will stay away from the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to stay away from. Because the Prophet ﷺ said they will not separate until the Hawd, until they meet me at the Hawd, at the pool of Kawthar. Now, so we believe in the Imams. And one of these Imams is Imam Zayn al-Abidin. His title is Zayn al-Abidin, his name was Ali. Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein. And Zayn al-Abidin means the beauty of the worshippers. And the reason why he was given this title is because he would perform 1,000 raka'at nawafil every night. Allah. He would perform 1,000 raka'at of nawafil every night. So he was given the title Zayn al-Abidin, the beauty of the worshippers. And he was also given the title of Sajjad, the person who is always in sajda, always prostrating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the people that we want to mention, and we want to look at their lives and read about their biographies. There was an event that when Imam Zayn al-Abidin went for the ziyarah in the Haram Sharif in Makkah al-Mukarramah to make tawaf in the courtyard of the Kaaba, at that time there was one of the rulers of that time, Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. He was the ruler of that time. He was the son of one of the rulers who were in the time of Yazid. So he was Hisham ibn Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. And he was not a lover of the Ahlul Bayt. He was against the Ahlul Bayt. His forefathers were those who oppressed the Ahlul Bayt. So he was also in the Haram at that time, trying to do his Umrah and making tawaf, and he had his followers and ministers and so forth. And he was trying to make tawaf, and he wasn't able to touch the Hajar al-Aswad. He wasn't able to touch the black stone. And even though he was a minister, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Nobility is not because of your political seats. In the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your nobility is based on taqwa. Your nobility and your rank is based on taqwa. Inna akramakum, the most noble of you indallahi, in the presence of Allah is the most pious of you, the most pious of you, the most muttaqi of you. And then there came a beautiful person in the Haram, whose face was very munawwar and shining, and you could tell that he had the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he was a special person. And what happened is automatically people got up, they made way, they separated, and they allowed him to touch the Hajar al-Aswad and to make the tawaf. Now Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, he was jealous. He said, this person, who's this person? He knew who it was. And his ministers started to ask them, who's this person? That the people are venerating him so much, and that people are going out of their way to let him kiss the Hajar al-Aswad and make tawaf. And he said out of jealousy, I don't know who it was. I don't know him. Even though he knew it was Imam Ali Zain al-Abidin. It was Imam Ali ibn Hussein. But he said, I don't know him. And there was a poet at that time, his name was Firazdak. He was also there at that time. Something happened, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put something into his heart. And the love of the Ahlul Bayt, there was this manifestation of the love of the Ahlul Bayt. He could not control it, he stood up. And he said, he told Hashim ibn Abdul Malik, who was the ruler at that time, the ruler of Syria, he said, you don't know who he is, I'll tell you who he is. So then right away he started to recite poetry in the praise of Imam Ali Zain al-Abidin. And it's a very famous qasida known as the qasida of Farazdak. And until now it's recited in the majalis of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah even, which is, it praises Imam Ali Zain al-Abidin, and it talks about the Imam. And some of the verses which Firazdak mentioned, he says, Rahmatullah alayh, when the pious are considered, they are seen to be their leaders. He's talking about the Ahlul Bayt. When it is asked who the best people on earth are, the answer is they are. When God is mentioned, they are mentioned after Him. And anyone who knows God also knows of their primacy. Speaking of the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, from this man's house, he's referring to Imam Ali ibn Hussein, from this man's house religion has sprung forth for the guidance of all nations. Right? And he said, هَذَا إِبْنُ فَاطِمَةٍ إِن كُنْتَ جَاهِلَهُ. This is the son of Fatima. Are you being jahil of this person? He was addressing the Malik of the time. He didn't care because this is the Ahlul Bayt. And his love for the Ahlul Bayt, he could not control, and this poetry just came. He said, هَذَا إِبْنُ فَاطِمَةٍ إِن كُنْتَ جَاهِلَهُ. That this is the son of Fatima. That if you are ignorant of that person, it doesn't matter because all the Arabs and non-Arabs know him. He said, even the Kaaba knows him. Even the Hajar al-Aswad comes to kiss him before he goes to kiss him. So this was the poetry. And after that, Firazdak was jailed. He was jailed even because of what he said in front of Hashim ibn Abdul Malik. And then Imam Zain al-Abidin sent him 11,000 or 12,000 dinars or dirhams to Firazdak. And he said, take this because of the trouble that you received. And then Firazdak said, Ya Imam, I did not praise you for this money. I praised you for the sake of Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. But then the Imam said, it's okay, keep, because our way is if we give something, we do not take it back. So he's saying the way of the Ahlul Bayt, if we give something to somebody, we do not take it back. So Firazdak kept it. This was the same person, Firazdak, who when Imam al-Hussein was going to Karbala, he met Firazdak on the journey. And he asked Firazdak, what is the state of the people of Kufa? And Firazdak said, Ya Imam, their hearts are with you, but their swords are with somebody else. He said, the people, their hearts are with you, but their swords are with somebody else. So this was the same Firazdak who came, and at the same time, he was making tawaf, at the same time Imam Zain al-Abidin, and he recited this poetry. So alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit from them, from their blessed akhlaq, from their blessed spirituality, from their barakat and fuyudat, ya arhamar rahimin. The reason why we mention these blessed personalities, because we live in a time, if we don't mention them, then people are taking other role models. Our children are taking other role models. Right? For example, people say that these are movie stars, these are so-and-so stars in the music industry, these are stars in the film industry. They use this term stars. Who made them stars? They're self-proclaimed stars. They're not stars. The true stars are the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to as stars. Right? These are the true stars, the Anbiya wal Mursaleen, the Sahaba, the Ahlul Bayt, the Awliya Allah, the Salihin. These are the true stars. The true stars are those that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned as the stars. He said, my Sahaba are like the stars. Follow any one of them and you'll be guided. He said, my Ahlul Bayt are like the Safina of Noor. are like the Safina, are like the ship, the ark of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. Whoever boards it is saved, whoever turns away from it is destroyed. These are the stars. The Prophet ﷺ said, the stars are the aman, are the safety for the people for the creations in the heavens. The Ahl al-Sama, and my Ahlul Bayt are safety for the people of the earth. Right? So subhanAllah, these are the stars, so we should look up to them, not look up to people who claim to be stars. If you look at the lives of these so-called self-proclaimed movie stars or sports stars or what informal, they're not people of akhlaq. They have no akhlaq. This is all a show. They're not worthy of being looked upon. They're not worthy. They're worshipping the dunya. They have no right to say they're stars. They have no right to be a role model. So we have to mention the true role models, like Imam Ali Zain Abidin, like the Sahaba, like the Awliya Allah, like the Ahlul Bayt, so that we re-incline ourselves to who the real role models are, and that we inshallah try to follow in their footsteps, inshallah, برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
البدر الليلة شوقا يلقي الأنوار الذهبية، يلقي الأنوار الذهبية، يلقي الأنوار الذهبية.